Welcome back, everyone, to the afternoon session of this 11th Ukrainian Symposium with the theme Preserving Humanness in Spite of the Catastrophe of War. I would like to invite our next speaker to join me on the screen, Dr. Marina Mojović. Hello,
Hi,
Marina.
Hi.
Welcome to our symposium. It's an honor to have you with us and presenting for us here today. I will just introduce you and then let you give your presentation. So Marina is a psychiatrist, a training group analyst, psychoanalytic psychotherapist, supervisor and organisational consultant in Serbia. She's president of the psychotherapy section in the Serbian Medical Society, and she has done very many things both within Serbia and beyond during the course of her career. She's going to speak today about searching for oases of humanness throughout the fields of war destructiveness. Thank you so much, Marina.
I need to share the screen. Is this okay?
Yep.
You see it? You see my PowerPoint?
I see the PowerPoint. We can all see the PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you very much, Patricia, for your kind invitation. Yes, I talk about searching for oases of humanness throughout the fields of war destructiveness. And this lecture was also devoted to Edgar Morin and his concept of oasis of humanness. But sadly, in his 104th year, he died just 2 weeks ago, and then this became in memoriam of him. And his work, among others, helped me cope with various crises in humanness in Serbia during the dismantling of our country. And he was among the most prominent global philosophers, sociologists, complexity thinkers, and the humanists of our times. And he was concerned with the state of sorry, he was just from the to see the whole, okay, with the world, and devoted to searching how to deal with. And he was, until the end of his life, a holder of the UNESCO chair in complexity thinking, and he advocates for the creation of oases of humanness in their relative autonomy, devoted to solidarity and overcoming of hatred. How will we create a space for work despite all disasters around us and in us? Is it possible to talk from the traumatized, frozen states of ourselves? At least I often met deadened internal and relational parts, helpless to deal with them. How to encounter here today, when such horrendous suffering of our friends, colleagues, families, children in Ukraine and Russia, in Palestine and Israel, in Kosovo and Metohija of Serbia, in Iran and Lebanon, and many less known. Each day exposed to terrifying evil deeds continuing in this very moment, and our souls keep bleeding, if not paralyzed or turned into stones. It all seems ungrievable. Are we able to bring anything helpful? And here is a painting of Dado Đurić, who was an artist who left our country before the war started. The whole group of famous artists went actually mainly to France, and they anticipated the disaster which will come. And so I'm very grateful, and a huge appreciation to EAP, to all colleagues who made this series of events possible, for the invitation to talk, and to our Serbian Union of Psychotherapy Associations. This is a painting which was lost somewhere in a war zone, a citizen who was painting a Sisyphus inside his stone ball, climbing towards a bloody sun ball. So, as we mentioned in the large group, human history is filled with horrendous atrocities. And We don't want to continuously live in contact with hell. So defensive mechanisms are often that we keep somehow away of this reality. This is, of course, Guernica, which was in response to the first air bombing, which ever happened. So now social trauma is all around and everything goes upside down, changes occur. And the clash of paradigm ruptures are usual defense mechanism, and speed of new trauma increases. There are paradigm clashes which make confusion. Where are we with the worldview, and the probability of wrongdoings and wrong decision of ordinary people, as well as us as professionals, become very, very spread. So even in this defensive mechanism, we feel often it's somewhere there in the other country. It's not of our affairs. And similarly, after the First World War, Paul Valéry wrote that whole worlds that vanished, empires that sunk without a trace into the depths of centuries, we were aware that the invisible earth is made of ashes, and that ashes signify something through the obscure depths of history. But the disasters that had sent them down were, after all, none of our affair. The abyss of history is deep enough to hold us all. We are aware that a civilization has the same fragility as a life, and that everything can perish by accident. So knowledge is stored in our social unconscious, and it includes these selfish attitudes like that's none of our affair. In these times of wars, with such huge disruptions of social, historical, political matrices, which are rushing throughout our societies, organizations, communities, it is of enormous importance to keep gathering our efforts and knowledge, at least to reflect together. But we are all involved. The burden is ours. We have to take the responsibility about our homeland Earth, as is one of the books of Maureen. The painting of this citizen with Sisyphus inside the bubble ball, floating throughout the fields of destructiveness with rivers of human blood, I tried to understand the relatedness with our so far known Sisyphus pushing his stone ball up the hill. Where are we with our humanization? What kind of cultures we are living in? And of course, we know about Christopher Lasch, narcissistic culture, then of Zygmunt Bauman, liquid societies and his liquid evil. And recently, Kalshet and some others talk that we are globally in a borderline personality societies. So Freud was to revolutionize the crowd psychology of Le Bon, converting it into the 20th century mass psychology, and to understand the unconscious present. Psychoanalysis and group analysis have built new developed framework for the study of the masses, groups, dichotomies between individuals and societies and their intertwining. But are we able to use this knowledge now when, and I saw something very similar written today in the chat. When this crisis of humanity is failing to become humanity, according to Maureen, the world is rushing towards disaster, but we must resist hatred. Democracy is in crisis on every continent, and societies of submission that could be called neo-totalitarian. Globalization has created no solidarity, and the United Nations are increasingly disunited. There was a time not so long ago when a change of course could be envisioned. It seems now that is too late. So social political dehumanization and perversion, local and global, are like some powerful hydra, might easily totally take over. This is linked to the well-known vicious circles of human destructiveness and evil. And what are we able to do as professionals, eventually as citizens of our towns and the world? Is it possible to turn these circles into opposite directions? And I think very similar to this paradigm of complexity of Maureen was our colleague Joseph talking about dialogic principles, which enables integration of dualities, avoiding both simplistic synthesis and irresolvable conflict, and embraces uncertainty and interdependence. So he fosters ethical responsibility, as humans must confront their own paradoxical capacities for creation and destruction. He talks about homo complexus, and about the politics of civilization, with broader civilization shift towards solidarity, ethical renewal, and ecological awareness. And very much about creation of oases of communities with relative autonomy and networks of social and economic solidarity. So, Oases of Humanness with psychotherapy. Engaged psychotherapists often weave oases of humanness, even in most difficult occasions, in our individual psychotherapy, in our groups, and in our psychosocial work, as well as in psychotherapy organizations, local and international, like this symposium, where we can experience this effort. I see it also as a serious oasis of humanness. But of course, these vicious spirals can very easily take over. This is again from this group of artists or the Yugoslav art before the outbreak of war, where I think it's a good image of the fourth basic assumption of Earl Hopper, was a very important group analyst who recently died, who talks about that the matrices or fields are in fragmentation in trauma and oscillating all the time between states of massification and aggregation, and then encapsulation becomes a defense against this state of fragmentation. So we co-create our oases as psychotherapists, but we sometimes don't have much time to reflect on the wars around, as is in Ukraine, and we slip into insisted places as unconscious defensive maneuvers. During our war time in Belgrade, in the Group Analytic Society, a concept was created of group psychic retreats or social psychic retreats, building on the Kleinian concept of psychic retreats of Steiner or Clausturm, of Meltzer, fantasizing of Winnicott, and encapsulations of Dustin. So these oases should not be retreats because we wish optimal openness, but easily they become negative retreats, and then they can be easily taken by the vicious circles. So important, I like this idea of becoming citizens of two or more realms, which so is connected to the optimal relatedness with the surrounding, which we constantly are in search. And often Divine Comedy of Dante, the 9 circles of hell, with his vision of the human soul's journey struggling between hell and paradise like on a wheel, when the poet of love, Virgil, appears as Dante's guide through hell towards heaven, and confronting the terrifying inner world of the trauma, the private hell, which trauma often becomes internally. But with the current clashes of paradigms, new adaptations and skill in navigating through so serious changes are needed, and we need jointly to learn in a social creativity, as I think this oasis as we have today may make. Instead of breaking contacts and links, shutting down into encapsulations, we need to make efforts and find methods for keeping contact with the opposite realms. So I think good enough groups and communities can be oases of humanness, which are external and can then be internalized, holding the pain for a while, as Virgil did for Dante along the way. And in this oasis, sometimes some parts get recovered and bring back the temporarily orphaned, lost parts of ourselves to the human groups. One example of oasis is the large group, which another organization to which I belong, the European Federation of Psychoanalytic Psychotherapy, immediately when the war began in Ukraine, initiated a large group-analytic group for Ukraine colleagues, and together with colleagues from other countries led by Gila Offer and Uri Levin. It was once a week, 90 minutes, and I was regularly there. And for some months, I also was asked to convene it. At the beginning, we were over 300 participants, and then the group slowly reduced. Colleagues from Russia also took part, which made a very complex dynamics, and perhaps later in the discussion we can touch that. But this experience, the experience that I had from the 90s with the destruction of our country helped in understanding to some level the processes. We believed that we lived in a beautiful, peaceful country, Yugoslavia, where I was born and lived till my middle age. And we believed in the brotherhood and unity among different nations, but at least my generation. But was that a bubble? Was it a false container? In just a short time, it was in weeks and months, it turned into such a horrendous bloodshed, we found ourselves in a hell. It's really extremely difficult to understand how was that possible. Did we live in a bubble, in a social psychic retreat? Yes, I think we did. And we were not allowed to actually have enough reflective spaces. Broken bridges put us in psychosocial isolation for many years. I can say that I personally lost all members of my primal family, which impacted me, of course. And understanding and support from friends and colleagues from abroad was often crucial when so many bridges seemed to be unbridgeable forever. I thought, for example, I will never go abroad. So I like the complexity theory. I think it's important for understanding the dynamics of matrices, and I gave some presentation about what are these black holes, which are, of course, from physics, but we can see them in matrices, and what happens in those event horizons of those black holes can be a transformative area. So yes, there were no reflection spaces enough in Yugoslavia, to my view, only in some pockets of some old customs, which was, anyway, I want to mention an important movement, Reflective Citizens, which began on the margins of peace protests. We would gather like ordinary people to talk and share, and slowly it became on different places, in gardens, in shipwrecks, in many different places. And this method was created through a long time, very carefully. It integrates therapeutic community concept, group analytic, group relations, and complexity theory. And we are trying to make true culture of dialogue and citizens' responsibility aspires to enable free sharing of thoughts, feelings, fantasies, dreams. It's opening minds to the chaotic and uncontrollable unconscious of communities within a safe enough dialogue situation, and neither aims to arrive to a homogeneous conclusion nor to become a political movement. And it was really a long process together with colleagues from other countries. But once the method was created, then now it is a well-established method, and it goes on in many towns in our region and is in many other countries, especially Italy, USA, especially much in Italy. There are, I don't know, maybe 20 towns they have now where they are doing this reflective citizens method. And it's simple to learn and to do, and any interested citizen can learn. And many do. So not only professionals, and we always do it without charge. So this is just a short program. It starts with social dreaming, then a large reflective citizens group, small leaderless groups, and the second large group, and then review and application. It seems very simple, and it can be done only by one person, everything organized and holding the whole. Yeah, I'm talking, it's a sort of a transitional space I found here from the poet Tagore, something which is connected. So it's a transitional space for thinking together, where it can revitalize the frozen parts and fields. And then we also have another branch, international branch, which started in COVID. It's only online, and there I thought it's not possible to do online, but absolutely it is. And we already had, from all continents and many people. So the sibling projects, but we are always open to similar projects. Like in Poland, there is Poland on the Couch, then Trilogy Model. And here I will mention it was already mentioned, the sandwich model. So we learn the art of listening and the art of dialoguing. Now the question whether it can be done in wartime and the war matrix, which we had in the very important topic. And somebody mentioned, the colleague, the soldier's matrix of Friedman. So it's a really important question because it's a different mindset of a soldier. I thought the discussion was important, which we had, but RC is born just in war times, as was actually the Northfield experiments, where was the birth of all group work of Major Bion, Major Fuchs, John Rickman. This is the history book about it. Was all was born in the wartime, as most of you know. It was a first and prototype self-reflective institution, Northfield, the war hospital. And there was the birth of all this method. So we think that RC is also a child from war. It's both simple and complex, and we have always to learn to navigate the directions. And so soldiers, I think I have a few more minutes. So this is the book of Robbie Friedman, who was the president of the Israeli Group Analytic Society and of the International Group Analytic Society. He was a significant figure for us because he was absolutely we had no colleagues coming to our country, at least not to the Group Analytic Society, and he was the first to come. And he brought this to Ukraine group analysis. He also established the sandwich model, and our colleague Taras Levin is doing it during this wartime. And we, reflective citizens and sandwich model, are very connected, and we consider them a sibling model. We can talk about the differences and similarities. So this is what Taras Levin brings about. He gave presentations, and it is going online. A project created from 22 for mental health professionals working under conditions of war. It starts as a small group, and then large group, and then again small group, which is the difference. So this is his announcement. It's very well written in the announcement what goes on, and there are really substantial similarities to what we are doing. And Taras is very devoted also in EFPP and in EGATIN. He gave a keynote, which is very important, about how international community from helped with supervision groups, and how important were institutional reflective spaces. So we try to keep openness for continuous learning from each other. And so our methods have some roots, some primary tasks, sibling organizations. We are open to be together, and it becomes a sort of a village because they are connected and learning all the time from each other. And we call it Reflective Citizens Koinonia, which is actually a community of communities, because we learn all the time from each other. And this is actually also a important group analytic book by Patrick Desmarais called From Hate Through Dialogue to Culture in the Large Groups. So I am finishing. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Marina. You've covered a huge amount of ground in a small time, and thank you very much for being able to do that. And I think your presentation has come at just the right moment in this symposium, and perhaps in just the right moment in the symposiums, offering the sorts of ideas that can be oases of humanity when they are thoughtfully created and introduced just at the right time. So these are ideas which I think are really helpful for people to hear about, and how incredibly well developed the reflective citizens culture of dialogue is. 20 towns in Italy have this running on an ongoing basis.
Yes, in Greece also, in many places, in the Balkans, in Serbia, many towns. In the States, there are 3 branches. In UK, it looks very simple, but we did the method very long. We were creating it, and now we made a very simple, as if simple, but if you do it with that method, it always works.
Yes. Well, simplicity is of the essence, and clearly huge wisdom has gone into this, and it's really important work. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, Marina, and I imagine that people will have questions for you in the round table later on. Thank you very much.